All right, so John, you ready for today's big healthcare show?
Amy, doing in this episode with you is like co-anchoring with a dining room table. I have no interest in it. Welcome to Hotline TV. Everybody, I'm John Mercurio.
And I'm Amy Walter. All right, here is the question, to paraphrase a certain Shakespeare. To reconcile or not reconcile?
Interesting, well
Yes.
done. Really good, smart, funny.
Thank you. So, as long as we're at it, why don't we just get into a whole discussion here about esoteric parliamentary strategy? Because
Wow.
that seems to be where we are in the healthcare debate. We've already done town hall fights.
Sure.
We've already done the battles over public option versus co-ops. Now it's the battle over whether Democrats should go it alone, i.e. the reconciliation, or go for 60.
Yeah, it's a hot, lazy August afternoon. Let's talk about the bird rule. I totally agree. You're right. All right, this is definitely the debate going on in Washington, in the White House, and on Capitol Hill right now. Go it alone. Just use this huge majorities that they have in the House and the Senate to try to pass healthcare bills. Or still look for a bipartisan strategy. If they do go it alone, there is the reconciliation process. They would probably, it looks like, according to sources talking to the Wall Street Journal and Politico yesterday, have to divide it into two bills. One that's very budget focused, one that looks at, probably then includes the public option. That would be the one that Democrats use reconciliation on. And then one that includes things that Republicans have already, in effect, signed on to.
Like,
some insurance regulations.
Right, caps on pre-existing conditions,
pre-existing
things like
conditions,
that.
et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, the bottom line is American people, in every poll we've seen over the past month, want a bipartisan bill. They don't just want a 60 or a 61 or a 62 bill. They want an 80 vote bill in
well,
the
we know
Senate.
that's not going to happen.
We know it's not going to happen, but the only way, I think, unfortunately for Democrats who want a much more aggressive bill, I think for this to pass with anything more than 2 or 3 moderate Republicans joining on the go it alone bill, is for it to be considerably watered down, for it to be much more incremental,
Yes.
and for it to not include a public option. And that's going to, if they don't go with that, if they don't look at that, Democrats are going to be hurt, I think, in a lot of these swing states where they need a lot of House, where they have a lot of House Democrats right now, where they're sort of base their majority, especially in the House. And in 2012, if this issue still matters, if we aren't talking about a lot of other things, which I think we will be, if Obama goes back to places like North Carolina, Indiana, and even Florida,
his numbers were starting to drop.
His numbers are down.
Yep.
Then I think he's in trouble.
That was a very good way of summing that up.
Oh gosh,
nice job.
Well, I appreciate your
I'm going to bring in
kudos.
we have the parliamentary, the parliamentarian coming in after you.
Good.
So I'm sure we're going to get into that more. Look, I think in many ways, for all the talk that the White House is screwing this up and their messaging is bad, et cetera, I think that what's happening fundamentally is this is how the House gets to understand why the Senate is doing what they're doing, right? Because if the message has been all along, well, 60 votes, you've got 60, just figure it out. Once it becomes clear that they're not going to be able to get through the Senate, what the House says is a do or die proposition, you're going to have to go back to where you're saying, which is scale this thing back, talk about a handful of things that make both sides happy,
Right.
pass something, and move on. And what we saw today, I mean, the Kaiser Foundation, which has been doing polling on healthcare for longer than anybody else, is showing some really dangerous trend lines for the Democrats, which
Right.
is more and more people saying they are more worried
Right.
about what government's going to do with the plan than what's going to happen if they don't get a plan.
Right.
More people saying they think it's going to be bad than good. This is disastrous to push something through.
Right. With
That's
just the
right.
Democratic
It's
vote.
with just the Democrats. It's not just like, oh, it's perceived as bad and people want bipartisan. No, it's going to be a bill that most Americans are going to say, I don't think this is going to be a good
Right.
thing for me personally, and
Right.
that's a bigger problem.
On the other hand, I mean, look, Democrats have, and especially in the White House, have taken a lot of heat over a relatively bad rollout, a bad message month, a bad message strategy over the past month. This past couple of days, though, could have been better. They may have been playing their hand better than we think, because I think by saying you go it alone, that you're willing to go it alone, by the, Rahm Emanuel talking to the New York Times and making that sort of strategy known to the public, you have seen a few Republicans move back into the fold. Chuck Grassley, who's been really partisan, really negative, very critical of Obama and of the congressional leadership, Democrats, over the past couple of days, is now moving back. He's doing this conference call with the
Yeah, but he
bipartisan
still said we should be able to
negotiators.
get 80 votes. That's just silly.
Well, it is
Why
silly,
is he saying that
but
out loud?
he is still. After I think a week or two of moving away from the Democrats, he is now going back into the negotiations. And I think, despite all the hoopla, despite all everybody is all over the place on this. But despite all that, I think those 6 people on the Senate Finance Committee, those 6 members, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, are being watched really closely because they do really hold what is probably the best hope for a comprehensive health care.
Or don't we think that so do you think then when all is said and done, in the end you have a bill that basically just barely makes it, you get all Democrats and maybe Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins to sign off on, and so they get, for cloture? Or do you think that they water it down so much that it's like 65 votes? It looks more like something like that. You're never going to get 80, but 65 votes.
I think,
and then it is able to say this is going to be a much safer vote for Republicans than the other.
I think maybe you get Mike Enzi, maybe you get a couple of other Republicans, but I think ultimately partisan instincts prevail, and you have the liberal wing.
No matter what it looks like.
No matter what it looks like, you're going to have the liberal wing feeling like they got these people in the White House, they got these huge majorities in the House and the Senate, even though it wasn't really the liberal wing in Congress that did that, and they're going to kick and scream, and some of them might actually vote against it. You've got Howard Dean basically doing this union-funded tour around the country right now, demanding a public option.
No, we haven't even talked about that, which is sort of interesting. Is this his way of getting back at the Obama White House for basically
banishing him from Washington?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is,
All right.
as a matter of fact.
Well, we are out of time. Until next week, I'm Amy Walter.
And I'm John Mercurio. Thanks so much for watching Hotline TV.